coffee was cold, but you know,
How long have you been sitting since yesterday?
in my mug, because I made my real coffee this morning. It wasn't just, it.
All right, welcome everyone. We'd like to welcome you to this webinar from the Louisiana Conference. Good morning, everyone. I hope all is well. My name is Todd Rossnagel. I serve as Director of Communications for the Louisiana Conference, and welcome to this webinar about the CFA report right before Annual Conference 2022, which will be held June 14th through the 17th inside the River Center in downtown Baton Rouge. We are glad you are with us. This is a Zoom webinar, not a Zoom call, so your mics and your cameras are off. We cannot see you or hear you, but we do want to hear from you. So we encourage you during the presentation, after the presentation, at any point in time, you have a question for our panelists, please leave it in the Q&A function. It should be down at the bottom of your screen. It has little text bubbles. It says Q&A. Type your question there, and we will make sure to disseminate that question to whoever can answer it best. So thank you for joining us. We are going to remind you that this is being recorded. And once we have a recorded version of this, we will have a link to it on the finance webinar page where you registered. We will have that link available for you to watch at a later date or to share with someone who might not have been able to make it. So thanks again for joining us. We begin with Bishop Cynthia Fierro Harvey, who is standing by, who is going to kind of tell us a little bit more about why we are gathered here today, and of course, open us in prayer. Bishop Harvey.
Hey, Todd and everyone, good morning. Good morning. I don't know where you are, if it's as stormy as it is where I am, but I'm keeping fingers crossed that we can all stay connected during this important webinar. I want to welcome all of you. And first and foremost, I want to thank the three presenters today, Kenny Beauvais, Sandy O'Brien, and Dr. Van Stinson. I cannot tell you how incredibly important these people have been to our life and to our work. I have been on more webinars or Zoom calls with CFA in these last 2 years than I think I have in the 8 previous years that I have been here, because these people have been working really, really hard to make sure that we remain responsible, not only for the great gifts that we receive from you from a stewardship perspective, but also that we remain accountable to this important work that we have to lead the church. This is ministry. It might seem administrative to some, but this is ministry. And I can tell you that Kenny Beauvais considers this, I'm not going to speak for him, but I just know the way he works. And this is his ministry and his gift to the church. So thankful for Kenny, thankful for Sandy, and also Dr. Van Stinson, who is a good comparison might be that Van is like maybe the chief of staff, if you will. There's not much that we don't work together on side by side. And for him, I'm very, very grateful. Today in this webinar, you're going to get not probably a granular view, but a highlighted view of the CFA report and what you might expect at annual conference. The intent here is to answer some of your questions now, so that it will help us formulate even further our presentation to the annual conference, and also to help you do your best work. That is always my goal, is to try to help the delegates do their best work. And the way to do that is to give you the information that we can to help you do that. So this is about asking good questions now. As Todd has already told you, you can put those into the Q&A, and we'll answer every question that we can answer. There might be some questions we cannot answer, and we'll tell you that we cannot answer those questions. So I know that we will eventually answer your question. We'll connect with you one-on-one after the webinar. We'll find the person that can answer the question. But these three people know this stuff and know their stuff well. So I know they'll probably be able to answer most every question that you will ask today. And again, if there's a question we can't answer during the webinar, we will at a later time. So I think that is probably all I want to give you up front, because I want to make sure that this time is yours for this important work. Again, thankful for all of you. I know you've got a lot of things you can be doing at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, but I'm so glad that you're here. So if you would allow me, I'd like to open us in a word of prayer, and then I'm just going to kick it over to Kenny. We're all in a lot of places today. Kenny is in Shreveport, and Sandy and Van are in the conference office, in the studio. I'm in the home office here, just in order to help the bandwidth at the office. We can't all be online at the same time. So I'm here at a distance from you, but certainly close by. So if I could, let us open in a word of prayer. Most gracious and holy God, for this day we give you thanks, and for the privilege that we have to gather around this table as your people. You've entrusted so much to us, oh God, and we just pray that we might be faithful to the call that you have placed on all of our lives. We come this morning with broken hearts that ache for the people of Uvalde, Texas, to watch the images of children who were gunned down, and teachers in this school is just egregious and painful to watch. We know that mothers and fathers and aunts and uncles and grandparents took their children to school that day and expected them to come home, throw their backpack on the couch and ask for a snack. And that didn't happen. So today we pray for those people. And oh God, it sometimes makes this work that we do, some days it might seem unimportant. But there are days that we are reminded how important the work of the church is in moments such as this. How important this moment is to the lives of people we may never know, as we do your work as faithful followers of Jesus. So help us in this hour to be open to the movement of your Spirit, to help us be good stewards of the gifts that you entrust us with. We know that you have placed this in our hands, and that you have done so knowing that you are with us, that at times where it might seem that you're at a distance, you are not. You are right beside us. So be with us this time. Help us to do your work. Help us to lead your people. And most importantly, help us to be your faithful followers. This I pray in your name. Amen. Amen. So Kenny, I will turn to you, And again, thank you for your incredible work. And this seems to be like the job that never ends for you in the church. And in some ways, I'm selfishly grateful that it hasn't. So I'm going to turn it to you, and I'm going to mute myself just to help with the bandwidth here. So I'm still here, but I'm going to mute myself, both my video and my audio.
Thank you, Bishop. And again, thank you all for being online with us this morning. And as the Bishop stated, we're going to try and give you an overview of the budget, hit on some significant points, and then try to answer any questions that you have, which will help us in fine-tuning our presentation as we draw closer to annual conference. First of all, our budget for 2023, the proposed budget, is $6,040,104, which is a change over the 2022 budget of a very slight change of a $26,000 increase, a 0.44% increase. And so the overall change is not very significant. There have been components or areas of the budget that have changed, and that's what I'm going to go into next. So first of all, let's take a look
Kenny,
at
Kenny, I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you. I think you need to share your screen for us here.
I'm sorry, just a moment.
It's all right. It happens.
How's that, Todd?
Rock and roll. We're good.
Okay. All right. Great. So again, our budget increase is very small in overall dollars and percentages, but we're going to elaborate, and I'll go through some of the various areas and how they changed. But first of all, let's take a look at the overall budget and how it is broken down by area. The largest portion of our budget is going to General Church and the Southern Jurisdictional Conference, 32%. Next is the area of Congregational Vitality at 23%. Then District Superintendents and District Offices at 18%. Bishop's Office, Cabinet, and Clergy Excellence at 13%. Administrative Ministries at 10%, and then other apportioned funds at 4%. So this gives you an overall breakdown of the total budget and where it is as far as each individual area. Furthermore, these are the changes in the 2022 from the 2022 budget to the proposed 2023 budget by the major areas. Some with no change at all. For example, General Church has no change at all. Congregational Vitality has had an increase. There's been a slight increase in the Bishop's Office, Cabinet. District Superintendents are actually down, and District Offices are actually down. And then also Administrative Ministries are changed, they're actually up. I'm going in the wrong direction. Administrative Ministries are up, and other apportioned funds are about the same. Now I'm going to go into deeper detail on each one of these areas so that you can see the differences. General Church Conference, again, no change. Then Congregational Vitality has decreased by 159,000. The Bishop's Office has increased by 113. District Superintendents, District Offices have gone up by 49,000. Administrative Ministries by 37,000. Other apportioned funds have declined. And then that totals up our overall difference of 26,203. More information on the exact changes and what those changes are. In Congregational Vitality, the use of reserves and unused prior year apportionments completely fulfills the requested budget for 2023. So there was a way in which we could actually reduce the overall apportionment budget for that area while still doing the great work in Congregational Vitality. In the bishop's office, our largest increase has been annual conference expense, going from virtual to where we will be in person. And also there were position changes that happened between 2021 and 2022 that caused a difference that will need to be made in the proposed budget. District superintendents and district offices show an increase, but in reality, what happened in 2022 was Baton Rouge and the Baton Rouge district and New Orleans district only apportioned 50% of their budget and used accumulated reserves to fund the remainder. So really, in reality, that whole budget area is flat when we go back and compare it to 2021. Administrative Ministries is up just $37,000. The largest increase there was for a salary increase for our staff of 3.65%. Our last change in staff salaries was in January of, and it's 2020. It was hidden on my screen. And also we've had an increase in insurance cost. And that's another important area that all churches are seeing increases in insurance costs, as well as the conference office. Other apportioned funds, a slight decrease there, but again, by using reserves and other revenue streams, we are able to fully fund the 2023 budget. So altogether, again, a very slight change in the overall budget, but information on the changes that are within the budget that make up the differences. Here's some highlights from 2021, financial highlights I'd like to add. 97% apportionment collection, a record high. And that is just amazing given the backdrop of COVID that we were up against and all of the uncertainty that we were facing with the pandemic. There was $7 million in ministry and support expenditures, 110% of our overall budget, by using reserves that we had to be able to expand what we were able to do. It was a record year for investment returns, but after record years, sometimes come downturns. And again, I'll touch more on that in a few moments. We had a PPP loan in which we were able to apply and receive a forgiveness of $409,000. So that was another windfall for our budget. The Board of Trustees were able to obtain $912,000 through the sale of properties. We had nearly $1 million in disaster response grants and donations. And that was an amazing number. And one that we're seeing some change in the future. And again, we'll touch on that in just a few minutes. We had a clean audit opinion again, which is great. It's been many, many years of having great audit opinions where our office and staff continues to do an outstanding job on keeping all of our financial records and financial reporting correct. And we continue to streamline and condense financial responsibilities from the various districts into the administrative office, where there is where we don't duplicate efforts. So that process continues as we go forward. Then let's talk about conference reserves. That's been a large topic of conversation in last year. So we're going to try and break that out and break it up for you as best that we can here and show you exactly how the reserve calculation is being done. First of all, at 12/31, we had $6,025,822 in unrestricted, undesignated reserves. Remember, I told you in the previous slide about the windfall that we had, so we were able to use an amount equal to that windfall to be able to go back into undesignated, unrestricted reserves. That added a portion of that amount of $361,000. So our ending reserves at 12/31/2021 were $6,387,245. Now, out of the reserves that we have, because we have major investments across the board, we had unrealized investment gains that were included in that $6,387,000. We need to take those out because unrealized gains can disappear. Market conditions have changed considerably since 12/31, and I have more information about that in just a few minutes. But the $6,387,000, we need to take the unrealized gains away from that so that we're talking about the true principal sums that we have invested. It's the next item that we need to take away is the proposed settlement for the Boy Scouts of America case. And the settlement amount that we have tentatively put aside for that is $604,000. That is our conference's responsibility in that matter. Then we take some investment earnings from specific areas and put it into line items of budget. Remember that we actually had more money spent in 2021 than we had apportioned because we were able to use reserves. This is another case of reallocating reserves into a specific area. So we had investment earnings of $132,000 that we reallocated into the budget for district superintendents, for parsonage and housing allowances. That helped us reduce our overall apportionment budget to the amount that we're proposing today. Next, CFA, after much discussion and a lot of concern about a variety of different issues, has established a conference contingency fund in the amount of $450,000. And I'll elaborate on that in the next few slides. Then we are also proposing a refund to our churches out of the undesignated reserve balances of $362,000. That amount is, the proposal is for us to pay that back on a pro rata share to all of our churches within the conference by July 31st, 2022. After taking all of those amounts away, we come up with 50% of our annual apportionment budget of $3,006,951, which is the designated amount of reserves as far as our reserve policy is concerned that we maintain. So again, this is an explanation of where we started with reserves, the amounts that are in specific areas, but yet still remaining with the 6-month reserve that has become the guideline that we're using as far as reserves moving forward. So now let me go into the conference contingency fund. There are a lot of issues that are coming to us in a variety of different ways that we cannot budget for at this point in time. So in order for us to have funds set aside for this variety of issues and not adversely affect our apportionment budget or cause an increase in our apportionment budget, we are asking that we establish this contingency fund. Some of the areas that we see as potential needs in the future are disaster recovery and response. In having a funded position to be able to take care of any impending disaster that we may have. And as we all know, we're in Louisiana and we know that hurricane season is upon us, and all of those factors will come into play at some point. And by having a reserve fund set aside for those, it just makes great financial sense for us to be able to do that. Disaster preparedness. There are new guidelines or restrictions on UMCOR funding that don't allow us to do some of the things in disaster preparedness that we need to do. So we wanted to, again, have money set aside for that. We continue conversation on conference youth activities, and we see the potential need for an expenditure in that area. And so again, we want to be able to earmark funds should those come up. Clergy nurture and care, as well as clergy and laity leadership development. Again, there are proposals, ideas, things that are in the works that we need to be able to be prepared for, again, and not have to change our apportionment budget. Our anti-racism work continues, and those activities also will need funding. We'll need some allocations of funds, and this gives us the ability and flexibility to be able to do this. So we want to make sure that with disaster relief comes the whole question of insurance. And we talked about the cost of insurance. We want to, as CFA wants to explore ways in which we can help local churches with insurance issues. We are not certain of what we can do, but we know that so many of our churches are unable to obtain insurance, that there may be a way by using conference financial ability and reserves to be able to help with insurability, cancellations, and property coverages in the event of disaster. Again, we are just beginning that conversation with some experts in that area to see how we might be able to craft some method to be able to help in an area that is sorely needed. Also, we know that there's going to be a financial impact on the conference for disaffiliation. That is an important issue, and we don't know what the impact of that might be. But we do know that from the discipline, paragraph 2553 sunsets or expires on December 31st, 2023. And then after that point in time, the financial changes that might be unknown might be known at that time, so that we would be able to have that date as a date to look forward to where we may be able to go beyond the financial impact of disaffiliation of various churches to the conference. So again, these are a variety of different things in which we will use this contingency fund for during this period of time. CFA will be responsible for overseeing the use of this contingency fund, and we will report to the annual conference exactly where the use of these funds has been. And if they're unused by 12/31/2024, we will discontinue the contingency fund and move that money back into undesignated reserves. But we see so many changes on the horizon that we felt it prudent for us to put aside monies to be able to have as a true contingency for a variety of different reasons that I've outlined, and opportunities for us to expand our ministry within the state. I hope that I've given you a fairly brief overview of that, and to be able to possibly answer questions either about the overall CFA report. Again, all of this data is contained in the pre-conference journal, and a lot of more answers we can point you to in that direction, or possibly answer them here within the conference, within the webinar that we're doing today. So Todd, Van, Sandy, I'm going to throw it back to y'all at this point.
Thank you, Kenny. So if you have a question, please leave it in the Q&A. Kenny, you can stop sharing your screen now. And Ben, I know I've sent some of these questions. You can see some of them as well. I know we have some that we want to speak to. If you can.
Certainly. I think the one outstanding question that has come from Dick Hooten, and Dick, thank you for that question. That's always an important clarification. Several years ago, the conference decided to allocate 10%. I'm looking at my phone. Let me look at the right camera here. 10% of the budget to new churches and church renewal. Has that decision been rescinded? And if not, where are those monies in this budget? So the answer to the question is that no, it hasn't been rescinded. It was certainly a guideline. If we go back and research that, a guideline to the annual conference that is always a part of the ongoing conversation with congregational transformation and with CFA in terms of establishing funding. If you will look on page 48 of the pre-conference report, line number 39, give you a minute to find that. If you've got it in front of you, you will see the balance as of 12/31/2021 for what is called new church development in the budget, with total funds available $5,077,804.70. That amount is available for funding much of the work of congregational transformation, along with, Sandy, I believe there's an additional apportionment that's included in the budget of
250,000.
Okay, so in essence, the 10%, all factors included, really is exceeded in terms of available funding to congregational transformation. And certainly that will continue to be a priority for us going forward. So hope that answers the question. We're happy to follow up with any additional questions you might have, Dick, but thank you.
Thank you, Van. We do have a couple other questions that have come in. Brandon Sykes asked the question, the contingency fund is expected to be independently funded annually in 2022 and again in 2023?
Not exactly, Brandon. That's a very good question, though. It's a one-time reserve that's going to be carried forward from year to year if it's not used. That's why we put a sunset provision in there so that if it is not used, it will return to the unrestricted reserves, but there is no budget line item for that consideration, not at all.
All right, thank you. We're having a little problem with Sandy's mic. We'll get that straightened out. Might want to just bring it closer to you, Sandy. I'm sorry. Okay, great. Let's see. Tim Barnes, I think I sent this to both of you as well. There was a mention of funds received through the sale of properties. Where can I find information on what properties were sold and the selling prices of them?
That, thank you, Tim. That will be part of the Board of Trustees report that comes out in the supplement. We'll be able to provide the details of which properties were sold, how much they were sold for, and what the net proceeds from those sales were. So that is information that will be forthcoming.
Great, thank you. Let's see, we're sorting through these now. Donnie Wilkinson, what is the total dollar amount of apportionments of churches known to be disaffiliating, the amount of apportionment of churches quite likely to disaffiliate?
Gee, that's a great question. And I really wish I had my crystal ball, but we really don't know the answer to that. There's a lot of things that are up in the air as to the timing. We are aware of a handful of churches that are wishing to disaffiliate, that are going through the process with their district superintendents, but we, have not had an impact study done on that particular item.
And one of the things I might add to Sandy's comments is that what continues to be at the forefront is how do we help churches who are certainly discerning this path forward in terms of their own relationship to the conference and the United Methodist Church, but also balance that with, the guidelines in the discipline, the approved disaffiliation agreement that the annual conference decided on last year that is guiding those conversations. And that is what is holding up, in fact, the distribution of the trustee report. And the reason that we are needing to provide a supplement is that we are in conversation now with a handful of churches and doing our best to help them, meet all the requirements and so that they could be presented for a vote at this annual conference. We should have more clarity on that the closer we get to annual conference.
All right. When you do things live, sometimes you got to have a little bit of patience here. Sandy, your mic is not working. We're going to work on that. Van, your mic is working, so we're going to have to share that mic. And I appreciate everyone and their patience going forward. Another question from Richard Hooton. I see new church monies in the CFA report invested with LMF. How and where are they being spent?
Well, Congregational Transformation does provide an annual expenditure budget and actually a little bit beyond that. As they are spent, we use money from reserves and current apportionments to fund those expenditures. So they're accessed from, it's kind of like your savings account. When we need to go back to the foundation to fund something, we request a withdrawal. Otherwise, it's funded out of the operating fund of the conference.
All right, we've got another question that just came in. Clay Harrison asked this: how much was spent on maintaining properties for sale this year? How much of that maintenance expense has concluded due to property sales, and how much is expected for next year?
That's a good question too, Clay. I can point to you on the Board of Trustees report on page 53, 54, page 55 of the detailed report of the pre-conference report. If you look on line 298, you will see it, that it's titled Board of Trustees, Closed Church Expenses. Cumulative to prior to January 1 of 2021, we had spent $113,003. That's in column G, starting the year, on closed church properties. And I have a list. I maintain it on a per property basis. We recouped, it looks like we recouped $44,000 of those. If you look on line 301 or 302, going across in column L, you will see that we recouped $44,000 when we sold the property, so that the net amount on the sales of closed church properties is shown in line N. I know that's not exactly what you're asking, but $403,791. So carry forward, we have unrecouped cost on closed churches. If you read again on line 298, all the way across in the last column, you will see a bracketed amount of $130,083, what we spent on properties. Because we do, once the properties get to the Board of Trustees, they have worked very, very hard over the last 2 years in bringing properties to a sale, because at that point, there's been no missional use deemed appropriate for the property. And then we only maintain the basic utilities and insurance and lawn care on properties. So we do try to recoup it. Some churches we will obviously never sell and not have the ability to recoup those costs, but other churches we can do that, and we do that when we can.
All right. Thank you, Sandy, for that answer. We do have another question here from Ben McGee. The question is, considering churches that may disaffiliate using 2553 in 2023, would the creation of the contingency fund affect the payouts churches would give the annual conference prior to disaffiliation? If so, and I heard Kenny correctly, that if contingency funds were not fully utilized, refunds would be delivered to churches. Would these refunds also be delivered to churches that leave?
So I think that there are a lot of hypotheticals in this, and I think, Ben, all questions are good questions. I think that in able to anticipate how many of those churches, certainly we are, as Sandy alluded to, not aware of that. I think what I understood Kenny to say, and if Kenny wants to chime in after this, Kenny, feel free to do that. That the process for the contingency fund will certainly be utilized over the next 2 years, and in the event that any of those funds are not utilized, they will be returned to unrestricted reserves. I think that's the process. And then after that, CFA certainly annually considers what to do with all unrestricted reserves. And then after that decision is made, that may include potential refunds to local churches. In terms of the decision now as to how that might impact disaffiliating churches or churches that have already left, I don't think we would be in a position to make that decision now. That would certainly have to be something that was decided when and if that situation arises. So.
Yes, and just to clarify on the contingency fund, again, that's going to be a fund that has been established out of the reserves. Therefore, it's not coming out of the apportionment budget. It's not apportioned funds. So again, it would go into undesignated reserves. And whatever we do with those in the future is a future decision of CFA and the conference. So we can't predict what would happen to those in the future.
All right. Thank you for the questions. We do not have any further questions. If you do have one, we do have a little bit of time left, so you can ask that question. Just a reminder to everyone that this webinar is a high-level look at the report prior to pre-conference. If you have a question that is perhaps comes up later, or you thought about it after we're dismissed, feel free to reach out to Van, Sandy, anyone here inside the conference office, and we will make sure to get that question answered. And also just a reminder that this entire presentation and the deck will be available on the website, on the page where you registered for the webinar, and we will make sure that you see that and are able to access this information. So I think, not seeing any additional questions, that could wrap things up. Any final thoughts, pearls of wisdom from Van, Sandy, Kenny? Oh, Allie Young just popped in with a question. She said, can GCFA speak to any of the proposed resolutions?
GCFA or CFA?
I think the intent is CFA. I'm not sure that the broad generalities of the question, Allie, which certainly is a pressing item on all of our agendas, but I don't know that broad of a question would be able to be answered, other than to say certainly the decisions of annual conference in terms of these petitions could have significant impact on our budget and on our future, funding for pension liability. Beyond those general, answers, I don't know if Kenny or Sandy might have any additional thoughts on it.
Well, the petitions were addressed at a recent CFA meeting and presented for consensus or non-consensus. And after a lot of discussion, CFA voted non-consensus at 100% in favor of non-consensus.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Kenny, anything final that you want to say?
No, but I appreciate all the questions. Appreciate everyone that has been in attendance. I think this is very valuable as a process. And I hope that we will be able to continue to do that into the future, so that we can answer these kinds of questions before we get to annual conference, and get information from you to help us improve our presentation at annual conference. So I look forward to seeing all of you in a few weeks.
Yes, indeed. And I know, Sandy, I see you raising your hand, and Bishop Harvey has raised her hand as well. Bishop Harvey, go ahead.
I'll let Sandy go first.
Okay.
Thank you, Bishop. I just want to encourage everyone to take a little bit of time and read through the pre-conference report. It is prepared for your use and your information. There is a lot of good information in it. We try to answer all the questions in the pre-conference report, but if there's something that doesn't make sense to you, I encourage you to pick up the phone and call me. I'm more than happy to walk through this information with anyone who picks up the phone and calls me. Thank you.
I would say that ditto. That was what I was going to actually share with all of you, is that we're still open to questions. This will be perfected up until the day that that Kenny to the podium. So any questions that you have or any lack of clarity, I think that's where sometimes our questions arise, is that these three folks are very intimately familiar with this work. And yet, you know, sometimes we're so close to it that we might not see the questions that you see. So it's really important. I would say that over the last 2 or 3 years, our pre-conference journal has more information than it has ever contained before. And in some ways, I think that's helpful, but in some ways it also adds to some confusion sometimes because it's so much information. So I would just say to you, as Sandy has said, read it carefully, jot down your questions, and make sure they still keep coming, because we want to make sure that when we walk into annual conference, you have some clarity so that you can do your best work. So I just wanted to say that. And like I said, we've shared more information than we ever have in the past in these pre-conference journals. And we think it's helpful, but sometimes it also adds a little bit to just being able to digest all of that information.
Thank you, Bishop Harvey. One more question did come up at the end here. Clay was asking, will there be a trustee report webinar?
No, there is not a trustee report webinar planned. The trustee report is pretty clear once it comes out, dealing with specific resolutions that have to be voted on by annual conference. The main items regarding the trustees will have to be in how the petitions that come for annual conference, that 2 of them are primarily directed toward the trustees. So there is there's really no content in their report that would require a webinar.
Right. But they can ask questions.
Absolutely.
Sure.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. I just wanted to remind everyone that annual conference registration has been extended until Tuesday of next week. So if you have not registered for annual conference, we encourage you to do so. Head to our website for more information on annual conference. We will be having much more about annual conference coming up in the days and weeks ahead as we get ready for June 14th through the 17th at the River Center in downtown Baton Rouge. All right, I think that'll do it for everybody. Bishop Harvey, could you close us in prayer? You did such a great job of opening us with prayer. Let's do that if we can.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'd be happy to close us in prayer. Gracious God, we come to the end of this time together, knowing that there is much work yet ahead for us. We know, God, that you have prepared the way for all things. And we just ask you to help us keep our eyes, our minds, and our hearts open to the movement of your Spirit. Guide us in every way and keep us mindful of the importance of this work that is before us and the responsibility that has been placed on each of us. So I just ask you now, as we go about our day, that we go knowing in great confidence that you are with us, that you are with us, that you are with us to inspire us to transform the world. Amen.
Amen. Thank you again for joining us. We will share the links in emails with all of you. Thanks again and have a wonderful day.